RNG gods will decide my fate at the start of each zone by rolling 4 brand new skills and using only them to complete the whole zone. The goal is to hit max level as a hardcore character with a brand new random build on each of the areas, as every new zone will force me to roll a fresh set of 4 skills that I can only use until zone completion. After level 10, we will also get random talents every level, but we'll get back to them later in the episode. Thankfully, Ascension Classless allows us to do it, and with recent changes that massively overhaul the open world, it will be more exciting than ever to explore it with some strange RNG classless builds, so let's dive right in. At the end of the first episode, I had planned to head to Darkshore next, but since this was the fully random version of the challenge, I decided to let fate choose for real. I pulled up the wheel with 4 possible zones: Darkshore, Westfall, Loch Medan and Red Ridge Mountains, and clicked the spin button. The wheel spun, slowed down, wobbled a little, and landed right back on Darkshore. I just couldn't help but laugh. After all the talk about randomizing everything, Destiny simply put me right where I already was, so I accepted it. Darkshore it would be. Before getting into the quests, I needed to reroll my entire skill set. The previous run I had Auto Shot, Prowl, Consecration and Victory Rush. Not bad to get, but now everything had to be scrapped. I opened up the scrolls and started the rerolls. The very first new ability I got was Greater Heal, which honestly felt like a blessing from the heavens. I knew right away it might be the only reason I would survive, but after that, things got weird. I removed Victory Rush, rerolled and got Auto Shot again. I deleted it, rerolled, Auto Shot, rerolled again, Auto Shot. At this point, I thought something was broken. Maybe I was cursed, maybe the scrolls were bugged, maybe the game was mocking me. Eventually the loop broke and I got the Flesh Hook, which at least let me pull enemies toward me like some kind of deranged Death Knight. After that came Aspect of the Hawk, which wasn't very useful without actual ranged attacks. And finally, I got Glaive Toss, a single ability on a 15-second cooldown, and that was basically my burst damage for the entire zone. I took a deep breath and looked at my newly assembled skill bar. I had Greater Heal, Flesh Hook, Aspect of the Hawk and Glaive Toss that came up once every 15 seconds. Everything else was pure auto attack. It was honestly tragic. I felt like a worse version of a classic paladin stuck in permanent white damage mode. Then came the talents. Some gave me a bit of crit, some gave parry, one gave energy, which was completely useless, so I ignored that and moved on. In the end, the build looked like something created by accident, which, to be fair, it was. Still, the show had to go on. I stepped into Darkshore and started my quests with the new build. Surprisingly, I wasn't doing as badly as I expected. Glaive Toss actually hit harder than I thought, and Flesh Hook turned out to deal decent damage too. Greater Heal kept me from dying, which was great because auto-attacking everything up close meant I was taking more hits than usual. It wasn't a pretty playstyle, but it worked well enough to move forward. After grabbing all the quests in Oberdeen, I somehow stumbled straight into one of the least exciting parts of the run, a fishing quest. I had 0 fishing skill and the worst fishing pole possible, so the first few minutes were just me sitting underwater, watching my bobber do absolutely nothing. Eventually, the skill started going up and the catches came faster. By the end of it, I was almost level 75 in fishing, which honestly made me question my life choices. Still, the quest was done, and that was all that mattered. Once I escaped the fishing nightmare, I went back doing real quests. Darkshore was packed with them, and it felt good to finally hit things again. But during the Furball quests, I ran into something I didn't expect, a rare spawn. Out of nowhere, this giant creature walked toward me, and before I knew it, I was scrambling for my life. His damage wasn't crazy, but his abilities were. He had a heavy hit and a stun, and with my build basically being auto-attack and prey, getting a stunned was almost a death sentence. I ended up dancing around trees, kiting in circles and spamming Greater Heal like my life depended on it, because it did, but somehow I won, and he dropped a surprisingly decent chest piece, which felt like winning the lottery after the fight. But the best discovery happened on a small island off the coast. I swam out there just to check it, and at the top of the hill I found an ancient shiny two-handed sword. Stat-wise, it wasn't much better than the what I had, but visually it was gorgeous. Obviously, I equipped it right away. If I was going to auto-attack my way through the zone, at least I would look good doing it. Underwater quests aren't usually anyone's favorite, but honestly, I kind of enjoy them. There's something strangely peaceful about sinking under the waves while everything goes quiet. At least until a thresher shark notices me and tries to take a bite out of my soul. I only needed 3 thresher eyes for the quest, and the drop rate was way better than on Classic. But somehow the last one just refused to appear. I circled the same patch of water again and again, diving down, surfacing for air, diving down again. Every thresher looked at me like, oh, you again, and still no I. Eventually, I got it and headed back toward Aberdeen. I had 2 route options, but Aberdeen felt right, so I followed the shoreline north. On the way, I emptied my bags, sold some extra junk, and picked up a few unexpected upgrades. A ring with agility and armor penetration, not bad at all, and a small backpack with a bit of strength and stamina. Nothing huge, but this build depended on anything that made my auto attacks hit a little harder. A lot of quests opened up at once. Thistle bears, relics, moonstone pendants. Darkshore was handing me full shopping list. I grabbed everything and headed out again, making my way toward the ancient ruins of Bashal Aran. Before I even reached the ruins, I dinged level 17 and rolled a new talent. And of course, because the universe in Ascension loves messing with me, I got another ranged talent. I have the high ground. 3% extra damage if I'm 5 yards above my target. It was hilarious because earlier I kept rolling ranged skills over and over, including autoshot, 3 times. I swear, the game actually wants me to roleplay as some kind of budget ranger. But jokes aside, I needed to get those earrings for the ghost in the ruins, so I pushed in. Glaive Toss did most of the work, and honestly, it hit harder than it had any right to. Auto-attacking everything felt like playing the world's scuffed classic paladin, but at least I had shiny two-handed sword, and when it crits, it really hurts. Once I finished the ruins, it was time to head back underwater, this time for shipwreck treasure. The sunken ships were scattered across the seabed, broken by the murlocs that overran them. Coast runners weren't too bad, but the seers could ruin me with one bad heal. I quickly realized Flesh Hook wasn't just a damage tool, it was my only interrupt, so I started saving it for the big moments. Inside one of the ships, I found a 12-slot bag. Honestly, that felt like a legendary drop with how messy my inventory was. When I surfaced again, I remembered I still needed to kill thistle bears and apparently every crab on the coastline. My bags were full again, my heartstone wasn't set, and I still had half of zone ahead of me. Somewhere in the middle of all that, I found a pair of one-handed weapons and started wondering if dual wielding would be better. I tested it, and dual wield had slightly more DPS, but the two-handed sword just felt right, and honestly, it looked amazing on my character. So I stuck with the sword. Style does increase my DPS after all. By the time I finished hunting bears, I was level 18 and got another talent, Primal Fury. Completely useless for me, since it only works in druid forms I didn't have. But hey, that's Ascension. Sometimes you get Lightning Bolt and sometimes you get Congrats, you're a bear now, talents without the bear form. Eventually the mushrooms were collected, the cultists defeated, and the ruins explored. I headed back toward the Red Crystal for its quest. Then I made it back to town with full bags, a mess of loot, and a handful of items I couldn't even use. After wrapping up a pile of quests in Darkshore, I realized I was sitting just shy of level 19. That next level felt important, not because of new spells, since this challenge doesn't allow them anymore, but because a single good talent could completely change how I play. At this point, talents are my only real upgrades. Anything with a chance on hit effect would be incredible, and even simple passive crit would go along the way. On my way back through town, I noticed I had been carrying a set of shoulder pads I had completely forgotten about. A small upgrade, but in this run every scrap of extra power matters. I also picked up a surprisingly decent one-handed weapon, and that made me reconsider my setup. My two-hander had served me well, but the numbers didn't lie. 2 fast one-handers were simply better DPS. I hesitated for a moment, The sword looked great, but this challenge is all about survival, not fashion. Even though I lost a little hit rating, the raw damage increase was too good to ignore. Before heading out again, trained more first aid. Early on when I had no healing spells at all, bandages were basically my lifeline. You never know when the game will hand me a zone where greater heal disappears again, so keeping first aid up to the skill felt smart. Somewhere in that chore list I dinged level 19 and eagerly opened the talent menu, only to get Relentless Strikes. A great talent overall, but only for anyone using energy or finishers. I just closed the window and laughed. When I finally switched fully to dual wield, the weapons looked awful, so I stopped and transmogged them. Nothing too crazy, just a pair of clean swords, white and red. It ended up matching the Polish flag perfectly, which gave me an unexpected burst of pride. And honestly, I swear the moment the weapons looked cooler, my damage genuinely felt better. With the new setup, I burned through the ruins, read ancient tables and cleaned up the remaining mobs. I even ran into a rare mob and took it down cleanly, thanks in part to my spiders from the trinket helping with extra damage. The bow I looted wasn't for shooting, it was a stat stick, but since Glaivetor's scales of ranged weapon damage, it was still a meaningful upgrade. Eventually, it was time for the real test, the Den Mother. She wasn't an elite, but she absolutely fought like one, especially when all her cabs attacked at once. The moment I tagged her, 4 bears rushed me and things got messy fast. I had to use every tool I had, flesh hook to separate them, potions to stay alive, quick heals in between swings. At one point, I used my racial shadow melt just to buy a few seconds of breathing room. After a few attempts, I found a strategy. Pull a cub, drag it to a cliff, kill it, then jump down to reset the danger by disengaging from the fight. One by one the cubs fell, and suddenly the Den Mother was alone. Without her pack, she wasn't so scary anymore, and I finally brought her down. It felt like a real milestone for this mostly auto-attack build. So I headed back toward Oberyn, turned in the Bashalran quests, and hit level 20. Almost a third of the way through this challenge. I crossed my fingers for a talent that would finally push my damage, and the game handed me Maelstrom combo. Completely useless. No Maelstrom stacks, no synergy, nothing. I just scythe and keep going. After restocking supplies, I finally remembered to set my Hearthstone here, something I had forgotten every single time up until now. Then I picked up the item needed to cleanse the Blackwood camp and stepped into a new subzone, Moonrest Sanctuary. It was a pleasant surprise. A small dog, new NPCs, and a fisherman asking for help with corrupted waters. That meant one thing, more Murlocs. I waded in and cleared them out easily enough, though the casters were annoying with their heals. The dual wield shined here, the fast attacks just got the job done. But the real challenge came when I tried to do the Mark Deep event, a mini siege where waves of Murlocs attack from the water. I accidentally pulled too many at once and ended up using Shadow Meld again to survive. After resetting, I realized I could get clever. If I waited until I was right on the edge of a level up, then a refill of health and mana mid-fight would save me. It worked perfectly. I hit level 21 during the event, my resources surged back to full, and I powered through the remaining waves. When Merc Deep finally spawned, I dragged him away from the pack and cut him down cleanly. With that done, I made a stop at the Grove of the Ancients to pick up a few more quests, but skipped the long escort for the moment. After all, I had to return to the fishing grind, yet another fishing quest in the zone that seems obsessed with them. Darkshore might actually have the highest fishing quest count in the entire leveling experience. Thankfully, the drop rates were kind and the reward was a bobber with a huge plus 50 fishing buff. After one more Bazbog tasks and a few more bear kills, I turned everything in and got a solid elixir of Ogre Strength. I kept my hit rating gear equipped, even when the other pieces were tempting, because missing the attacks with the dual wield build is its own form of pain. When I wrapped up the last Bazbog quest, I had two choices in front of me: head toward the ruins or deal with the excavation site. Both paths looked tempting, but the excavation felt like the smarter place to start. I still had a few Moonstalkers to hound down for the Master's Belt anyway, so heading in that direction would let me clean up everything in one sweep. The moment I arrived, the plan looked simple enough. Escort a dwarf through the excavation and get him out alive. But the map recommended this quest for 2 people, and the reason became obvious the moment I stepped inside. The place was crawling with stone golems. Thick armor, slow swings, and absolutely no chill. The dwarf seemed determined to walk straight into danger, so I knew I couldn't rely on him to survive. I tried to rush ahead and pull things quickly, but he kept summoning extra mobs at specific points, and those waves could easily get out of control if the room wasn't cleared first. So I switched to a safer plan. Take the whole place slowly, one enemy at a time. Even though the dwarf was weak, I managed to keep everything off him. My buffs helped a ton too. A strength potion, a stamina potion, small bonuses, but they stacked up nicely against enemies that were now almost my level. The golems especially were tanks. You could feel how much armor they have every time I swung. By the end of the escort, the dwarf casually mentioned that the fossil we spent all this time fighting for was already sitting safely with his friend in Oberdeen, meaning he had dragged me through this golem-infested dungeon for nothing. Crazy bastard. Along the coast we found a very nice world-forged item, a shield, strong stats, even with movement speed proc. I wasn't using a shield for my build, but I kept it anyway. You never know when a tank playstyle might appear in this challenge. With the excavation cleared, I headed down the beach toward the murlocs. These ones were much stronger than before. Only 2 level under me, but already noticeably tougher. This run has taught me one thing: green quests are the sweet spot. Anything closer to my level starts getting dangerous fast. The oracles that weren't healers, like I feared, just ranged lightning bolt machines pelting my face non-stop. Still, the fights went well. I cleared the beach circles, finished the last murloc waves, and made my way deeper into the coast for the corruption research quest. Turned out some of the stuff already pointed toward Oceanvale, but I wasn't done with Darkshore yet. From the beach, I turned toward the cultist camps, where the Lost Master storyline picked up. The mobs here cast heals non-stop, so every fight stretched out longer than it should have. Eventually, I recovered the stolen supplies and freed a captured dryad, another escort, though thankfully a much easier one. Not long after, I reached a wounded sentinel who needed protection from waves of furbolgs. I figured it would be easy. I was very wrong. These furbolgs scaled higher than their appearance suggested. Without potions and with Fury Fire blocking stealth, the whole event spiraled quickly. I had to abandon the attempt and return later. At that point, my bags were full and quests were piling up, so I rode back to Oberdeen. It was time for a big turn-in session, and it paid off. 6 beach creature quests alone pushed me right up to level 22. The talent I got was useless again, but the upgrades themselves were solid. I cleared out my inventory, picked up a couple more quests leading north, and set out again. The northern coastline hit me with a reminder: even normal enemies get tougher the closer you get to the level. Then I stepped deeper into the ruins, and everything changed. A shimmering barrier sealed off a massive underground structure that absolutely did not exist in vanilla. Whatever Ascension added here, it wasn't small. The moment I stepped inside, I realized that I was dealing with level 22 elites, equal level. No special mechanics, just big health bars and steady damage. I took them one by one, healing between every fight. A ghost saber from the cat figurine helped a lot, but the deeper I went, the more dangerous the place felt. Summoners cast Blizzard in tight corridors, line of sight barely worked, and respawns were happening faster than I liked. Deep in the ruins, I reached the boss, 4000 HP, with guards, summoners, and a blizzard hitting like a truck. I tried to pull her safely, but the room respawned mid-attempt and I had to shadow melt out before everything collapsed. The fight looked almost impossible. I left frustrated, climbed back to the surface, and finished some smaller side quests. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the ruins were beatable. I just needed one more level. I went to a nearby beach to help a known captain, so first we had to kill some of the local wildlife to find the keys to his malfunctioning machine. It turned out that it's some kind of shredder that he wanted back at his side, so we escorted him back to his master, only to see how it overloads and turns on us. He was an elite, but in comparison to the ones in the ruins, he had only 1.5k HP rather than the 4k. With my fellow cat figurine and trusty jar of spiders, I managed to destroy it and grab my rewards. I hit 23 shortly after, grabbed a mountain speed talent, helpful but not as a damage boost, and returned. Even then, the elites were ridiculous, but I noticed a player passing by. The area wasn't empty anymore. If I timed things right, I might be able to pull the boss while someone else softened the room, and that's exactly what happened. In the chaos where other players started to pull his guards, the boss finally stood alone. I pulled her into a safe spot, slowly grinding her down through damage reduction debuffs that reduced her damage taken by 70%, which is massive, another respawn timers, and my rapidly draining mana pool. It was like fighting a 20,000 HP raid target with nothing but auto attacks and a few tools. I healed, kited, prayed for my spiders to spawn at the right moment. Every mistake could ruin the run. And then, after what felt like ages, she fell. Honestly, it was one of the hardest fights of this entire challenge so far. I stood there for a moment, just relieved. Even after all that, I still needed to kill a few more elites for the quest, but at least the nightmare part was over. Shadowmeld carried me out of the ruins and I rode back to turn their wards. Nothing spectacular, just the cash, but it felt awesome to get this done. Although we had to get back to ruins for a second, as there were still 3 protectors to be killed, along the way we stumbled upon a rare mob that wasn't super powerful, but I pulled her with some adds, therefore I had to use Shadowmeld when I pet on her to be able to drop the adds and keep her in combat. That was the best decision I could make. She dropped an amazing polyarm that I had to equip instantly. This will definitely help making that difficult escort quest, so I farmed another cat figurine to have a pet ready for the fight and teleported back to Oberdeen. From there, I headed straight to Grove of the Ancients to turn last quest and went to nearby Furball Caves to help the Master Volkor escape from their prison. Since my combat capabilities are weak, I chose to do it by stealth, so we are very peacefully left the place and get him to the main road from where he could manage himself. Then finally came the time to come back to Sentinel Ainasha and help her withstand the Furbolg attack, which we failed previously. This time, I'm a lot more equipped and ready with potions and summons. The fight was really tough, and at one point I thought I'm already overwhelmed with no escape route due to Fairy Fire debuff that doesn't allow me to use Shadowmeld. Thankfully, all of our cooldowns were enough to get them down one by one, and my pet helped to tank some of the enemies. We eventually took down the main boss and the Sentinel was free. Then we come back for a second to Grove of the Ancients to take the final quest of Darkshore, escorting the sleeping druid to Ashenvale, which turned out to be smooth as quest became completed at the very moment I got him to Ashenvale border. Therefore, I went further into the forest, as I had 5 quests to turn in that started and had to be done in Darkshore, but turned in here. We do a quick tour around Ashenvale that ends with last quest turn in Astronar, and then hard back to Oberdeen to turn final quest for today. As you can see, every quest in Darkshore has been completed, including the elite ones, so our job here is done. My Auto Warden build turned out to be quite decent in the end, but I did have to use it to its limits to get the hardest things done. Nonetheless, new adventure awaits us, so the fate will decide to which 20+ zone we will go next and what random 4 skill build awaits us.